This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we are live on the air with Project P. And we talked to you before, and we're talking to you again. We're glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, things have changed. I think since the last time we talked, the world has changed a bit, but we're still working on our music, and you're still doing what you do, and I'm doing what I do. And we just have to get a little business out of the way before we get into the primary interview. But we are now sponsored by a company out of Germany called Double Jack Online, and they are a philanthropic online lottery. And what they do is they allow you to play Keno and Powerball, and then a percentage of the profit go to charity. And so it's a cool thing. So you get to do like some kind of online gaming, but you also get to be helping out causes. So that's kind of interesting. So we just like to you know announce who they are, and we'll show their overlay here. And if you actually just take your cell phone and scan that, you can get into it and find out if you want to play Double Jack online. But now that that's out of the way, we'll get to the main interview, and we'll talk to you about what you've been doing since the last time we talked to you, which was a while ago before the pandemic.
Yeah. Um, Wait, I feel like we did have another one earlier this year, didn't we?
Yeah, we might have talked to you earlier too, maybe in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, what I've been working on before March 2020 was I was just trying to, I guess, work on my producing skills. And then earlier this year, um, I kind of started to figure out a workflow that helped me write songs faster, make songs faster.
Oh,
And
cool.
so, yeah. And so now I am kind of transitioning, not completely away from electronic music, but I'm exploring more heavily R&B inspired beats.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
saw that write up. So are you getting more into like soul or neo soul or traditional soul or kind of modern soul?
I would say, yeah, like R&B soul.
Hmm.
Yeah. But
Well,
still I still design a lot of synths for it.
yeah, well, it's interesting because a lot of soul music, if you get from Maxwell to Prince, even going back to if you get to like Marvin Gaye, there's sense on that stuff. There's sense on some of his later work. So sense have always kind of been involved at some big, Stevie Wonder, it's big synth head.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's like when you become a songwriter, I think you start to explore forms that give you more of a way to actually express a song. And did you find that like R&B is more um you're more able to express a song idea in R&B than like straight electronic? Is that what started to happen?
Yeah, that and I kind of get into these phases where I listen to a certain genre. And I think I kind of got back into my R&B phase. Although my last R&B phase was more 90s R&B, but
Mhm.
this phase is more contemporary. So I
Contemporary, so no,
started,
it's
yeah,
like 2021 R&B, not like 1970s R&B.
right.
Like
Yeah.
Curtis Mayfield, funkadelic type of stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. Like as I get into the music I do, I change my workflow too. I've been very much a person that's like not into the DAW. I've been like very hardware analog focused most of my career, just because it's kind of what I like to do. And then
Mhm.
this year I kind of bit the bullet and I got an Akai Force. So now I can actually do clip based stuff, but I still didn't want to use a PC. So I'm kind of using like this MPC type of thing where they stand alone.
Mm.
Um, but it's a totally different workflow than what I'm used to. And it changed. So like when you started finding new tools, did it really change like you said you made your workflow easier. So you found a different method of how to construct stuff and then you went to a different genre.
Yeah, so well, I didn't actually get any new equipment, at least not yet. I
Mhm.
requested some stuff for Christmas. So I have a Christmas wish list and most of it is producing gear. So hopefully I get new gear soon. But it was actually just I guess really getting into the mixing workflow
Oh,
and
yeah, that can
yeah,
really radically change your music.
yeah, exactly. So I
'Cause
still use Ableton, I still use, all the stuff that I use. I have the same monitors, the same, the same MIDI keyboard that I use. It's just my workflow that has really changed.
yeah, 'cause I started discovering, because now I can do clip-based stuff that like, in the analog world, everything is kinda like you physically have to have a pedal or a box if you
Mhm.
wanna do something. But in this kind of modern DAW world, like you could go and grab a compressor, you could grab like an effect, you can download effects, you can download other things. So once you start playing, it's like, oh, I can do a spring reverb, or I could go do a space echo, or I could do, and then you can radically change a mix. You could have something straight, and then say, well, that was really not interesting, right? And then suddenly you put a different effect on something, and it totally radically changes that sound. Um, and again, depending on how detailed you get in your mixing, you can like start to really change the way your music sounds based on like choices that you make in production.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of reverb, I've heard really good things about Valhalla Reverb.
Oh, you like
Um,
that?
well, I still haven't invested in that one. Right now, I just use an Ableton stock reverb, but I definitely want to get into more plugins that are specifically for those effects. I think
Yeah, I
that'll be
just
really cool.
finally my Akai Force has all these plugins, and so you can do like four plugins at once. And then for my analog workflow, I've got a real Moog analog spring reverb, so I can actually run things into a analog reverb. And then I've got some like analog delays, and so it's interesting because like an old synth technique is like if you take an old like a Roland or a synth, a hardware synth, you run it through like a stop box. You go buy the same kind of pedals a guitarist has, and if you run them through those pedals, you can chain them, and then you could have tons of different things affecting your synth, and then it radically sounds. It becomes like your own sound because like everybody might have that synth, but then the choice you make of how you routed it through all these effects suddenly changes the sound to kind of like a custom sound, which is kind of like I think every producer wants to get that custom sound unless you like cloning other people's stuff.
Yeah, true. Yeah, definitely helps to create a unique sound, layering different plugins and effects.
Cause you also like sell sounds like you sell like online. I've seen like you advertise that you sell like packages. Maybe talk about that.
I haven't actually sold any yet. I
Oh,
give
you
them
haven't.
away for
Oh,
free.
oh, you give them away. I know you have packs, but I didn't realize if you were selling or you just like offer 'em.
Yeah, right now I just give them away every time I do a release. I release the sample pack of all of the samples that I used in the song.
Mhm.
I definitely do want to sell my sample packs in the future. I just want to have some that are not from my releases, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I think if you do that, then you might start getting copyright strikes on your own stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the big problem today, because like sometimes like I'll go do a show and it's my song, and then YouTube will
Mhm.
say copyright claim. Like, well, that's me
Yeah,
talking. I'm on my own show and I got a copyright, and then I have to go challenge it. So, well, didn't you realize like that's my song?
yeah, exactly.
It's like it's not anybody else's song; it's my song. But that's just the way the
Right.
world is. It's like you have to go into all this paperwork to prove this song is yours, and it's like, well, I'm on screen singing my own song, and you thought it was somebody else.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh, it does
Um,
happen. It does. It happens to me a lot because I do a lot of live performing of my own material,
mhm.
and it's kind of crazy today because the algorithms don't care. They just like, oh, you're playing something.
Yep,
Well,
flagged.
it's like your stuff.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
annoying.
yeah, it's very annoying. But let's look everybody like listen to actually watch your video. We're gonna put this up so people get a good idea of what you sound like. So I'm just gonna set that up for a second. So we're gonna go into fantasy and then we'll talk a little bit about it after. Okay.
All
I'll
right.
put you on mute and then we'll play it and then we'll come back. All right.
All right.
So that was fantasy, and we're back online. Now you can hear me, right? You bet you're
Yep, yep.
back. Yeah. We always want to make sure we get transition right. But yeah, so so that video, maybe talk about the video and how you put it together, and then also talk about the song and anything about it that you think your fans would be interested in, and how you came about developing the video and the song.
Sure. So I can start with the video. I had a video editor create that for me.
Oh wow. So
Um,
that's custom. That's like that was customized for that song.
yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think yeah, I believe this was the first. No, sorry. I've had two other songs that were also done by video editors.
Hmm.
But yeah, so this one is the third one. I do like post production effects
Hmm.
on it after they send it to me. So I
Oh,
usually
so
do get to work on it a little bit.
oh, so you do
Um,
some video work too.
yes, I do
That's
usually.
cool. Yeah,
Mhm.
I kinda dabble in that myself, but, I think it's just cool, like, when you're in, a creative person, if you can be involved in your video or your artwork for the projects that you work on as a musician, artist, it's kinda like the full package, back in the day when people had vinyl, a lot of artists would participate with the photographers and the artists on their album covers and all the liner notes, and now videos are kinda like that. For this age, now we have videos. So, back then you had the liner note or the pictures or whatever came with it. And now you've got this, ability to, have a director or producer help you, or you combined with them an idea. So it's interesting. So did you kind of have a storyboard or kind of let the person interpret your song?
Well, so I actually, as you saw, there were lyrics that I wrote. So this is the first time I've written lyrics for a song or like in general.
Hmm.
So I had the lyrics, so I kind of already knew what the song was going to be about. So I just told the editor my ideas, and I told them, what kind of song it was, and to, I kind of gave them free reign
Hmm. They kind
with
of put
it.
it where, yeah, because that's the one thing with it when you're working with film directors, 'cause, like they'll interpret what like you can go and tell them like every little thing, and then they kind of look at you like, I'm a director. I'm gonna kind of do it. It's like I think it's like artists are like, just let me do my thing. But I think every artist is gonna want to put their little stamp on it too. So it's kind of like, well, how do you have that synergy so you're not stepping on each other's toes? But sometimes it's just good to let somebody have free reign. Because if you're sitting there with every second when somebody's working on it, then that becomes like, oh, I don't know if they enjoy this.
Right, exactly.
But, I think it's interesting that so these lyrics that you came up with, did you imagine that at some point somebody would ever, actually sing the lyrics?
Yeah. So so it's funny because I talked about my mixing workflow and
Mhm,
how it helps me write songs faster. So although I released Fantasy, I believe at the beginning of this month, November. I wrote that in June. I wrote it all the
mm,
way back in June. So it was
mhm,
pretty much mixed, yeah, around June, July. And I'm only releasing it now. So I feel like yeah, that part of it is like, yeah, I wrote the lyrics, but I feel like I'm better at writing lyrics now that it's
mhm,
been a few months since then.
mhm.
Um, but um, sorry, I think I lost my train of thought. What was your question again?
I guess would you ever think they're having, like, a feature of somebody actually singing like, be a vocalist come in and actually take your lyrics and add, like, a vocal?
Right. Okay. So for that one, I kind of just, yeah, I came up with the lyrics. I was like, yeah, this is cool, but I'm not sure who's gonna sing this.
Mhm,
And then I was kind of um searching on YouTube, and I was like, well, what would taking vocal lessons look like? And then I started kind of exploring that, and I found a really good channel. And I
mhm.
was like, I tried some of the exercises myself, and I was like, I think I would benefit from taking one-on-one lessons.
Oh, cool. So you are thinking as a singer-songwriter eventually using your own voice on your own material.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the goal.
Yeah, I think that like it took me a long time because I understand it because like I've been a keyboardist since I was 17. I only started singing in 2016 and I'm 54. So it took me a long time. I never sang on anything until 2016. And then suddenly I've got all this stuff I've done as the ghost. But it's like before that, I was just like, just a player, right? I'm a producer, I'm a player, I'm not gonna sing. I left it to other people. But then I found like when you're a producer, it ends up becoming like something that you end up having to do. Like when you're a songwriter, eventually you'll find your voice and find a way to put your voice on your own material. But it's kind of like that classic singer songwriter thing because there's something about even if you're not pitch perfect, like you're not. I'm not Marvin Gaye. People are Whitney Houston, but there's something about when somebody sings their own song There's like an honesty to it. And you don't necessarily have to be the best singer in the world, but if you have that feeling that, it's your song, so you own it. I think that's what comes across. And so sometimes, like, you don't have to worry about being as perfect as possible, but you just have to be able to, does it convey the emotion? And if it conveys the emotion, then it's like it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. It felt like even though at the time, now I've been taking vocal lessons since July. So now even though I'm not exactly where I want to be, obviously,
Mhm.
I am at a point now where I can imagine myself on future tracks. But before,
Okay.
I still really couldn't, but it felt right for me to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Even, not anytime soon, but in the future, it still felt right for me to do it, which is why I went forward with the classes.
Well, I think that's great because there's something about a singer songwriter that's like, most of my interviews are with singer songwriters. I don't really deal with people who are, are just vocalists that sing other people's song. I tend to deal with, like, in the indie field, no matter what genre. It's like people who write their own music, whether it's instrumental or not. But it's something about that I think is very interesting to me as a music fan. I've always been interested in the kind of underground music and,
Mhm.
independent or college radio growing up. That's where I found the stuff that I really was digging. Because I know the top 40 is cool, but there's a lot of interesting things happening in the, emerging artist. I think that's where emerging, because that's where, like, if you're a musician, you want to see what's really going on. You check the underground, you check SoundCloud, you check, all these places where there's new artists coming out. And it's not always what is considered to be, in the top tiers of our industry, but there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening, and it ends up eventually getting to the top
Mhm.
because there's a lot of, things come out of nowhere. You get hip hop. You get, now you get, he had grunge came out of nowhere, but it really didn't. I mean, it came out of punk, came out of rock. There's different things that come, you get, mumble rap. There's always some new aspect of something coming. And, if you want to kind of be on a heartbeat of it, you got to check out where the emerging artists are.
Yeah, true. Very true.
So, so a lot of this, new kind of direction, is there a project associated with your new kind of soul, modern soul R&B tech? Is there an album or an EP you're going toward, or are you working toward individual singles?
I think for now, I did have a an album idea,
Hmm.
but I think for now, I'm going to continue releasing singles because doing a
Yeah.
whole album is it's a lot of energy,
Well,
put in that project.
I think it's a good strategy because what I see is, like, there used to be this kind of thing. It going kind of still is out there in the industry. You get some people whose producer would say, "Well, I'm gonna spend like 6 months trying to make the perfect song that's gonna get into the top 10," and then you put all your energy into that. But then it's kind of like that's all your eggs in one basket. And,
Right.
unless you're working with some big producer that's gonna guarantee that it's gonna break through, then the other strategy is to kind of like, well, I'm going to write singles and try to do my best work on single projects, and then put them out on a regular basis so I can keep my fans engaged.
Mhm. And you
And
get better with every single.
yeah, and I think it's like if you just spend all your time 6 months working on one thing, it's kind of like, like Born to Run. Like Bruce Springsteen spent like 6 months building a wall of sound for like that song. I mean, that's a really good effort, but it's like the band got burned out. And they're like
Mhm.
they're like, "What the heck?" You know, it's like so you can do that, but then you kinda like you might deal with, like, the consequence of doing that your band doesn't wanna talk to you for, like, a month because you burned them out.
Yeah.
But,
Really true. And another thing too that I was, because I do listen to a lot of music marketing, um, YouTube videos and podcasts and things like that. Another kind of strategy with releasing singles is that, kind of having to do with fans, your fans or people who might become your fans are more likely to invest time into listening to one song rather than a whole album. So I
Yeah,
feel like
that's
if I was to release an entire album, my fan base is not that big.
yeah.
So it's most likely people not going to listen all the way through. Whereas, they can probably invest time into one single, and they're probably more likely to invest their time into one song, one 3, 4 minute song, than an entire like 30-minute, hour long album.
Yeah, it's just the attention span of the typical fan, and then also the fact that you can kind of send it to playlist and try to get playlisted and try to get placed into like into like sync licensing and different things with a single easier than a whole album. And then from like if you're successful with like sync licensing, if suddenly you can get your thing into a jingle or get it into Twitch or because I'm part of BMI. After many years, I was like, well, I'm gonna make sure I got my pro BMI stuff taken care of. So it's like you license your material, and I went and got like a bunch of my songs licensed for Twitch users. So then I can get like passive income if anybody goes on Twitch and uses it. So there's different ways that you can, as an artist, you have to look at different means, like getting music licensed for video games, getting into short advertisements, working with different, influencers. It tends to be because musicians, we don't get paid a lot of money for streaming and we can't play in venues as much now. And so we have to find other ways to get income in playlisting or, sing licensing and different things or what we have to do to kind of be able to get out there.
Yeah, yeah, really true.
But one thing I did this year, which I'm not sure if you're going to be into, but we did this Peg music festival in July where we had like a bunch of podcast guests actually play live. Um, um, from the whole criteria was anybody who had been interviewed on the show July 16th through 18th. We had this concert where people did 20-minute sets from their bedroom producer. It was called a bedroom producer festival, and people did it like from stages or from their bedroom or from a garage or from the basement. We're doing it again in February. And so, anybody like we're asking all of our guests, "Oh, you want to participate?" One of the ways we participate is not everybody played live. Some people just gave us video. So some people went and they produced a video, and it was either like 10 minutes or 20 minutes video material, and then we actually ran that during the festival. So it's potentially something that you might want to be interested in. It's just a way to get your music out there to our audience, and we've got a bigger audience now. Some of our podcasts are hitting like at least 1,000 views per podcast. So that's good for us. But we're always trying to do better. So you can let us know if you'd be into that because we think musicians having a hard time playing. And that's the question. Like, if because of the pandemic, you're probably not playing live shows anywhere. But have you done any kind of like online events, or you mostly do video and do it that way? Or have you ever thought of doing anything online?
Yeah, I have not done any kind of performances. I'm trying to work on my piano skills right
Hmm.
now. And I think I might have mentioned this on Instagram, but along with the vocal lessons I've been taking, I have a friend who I met a couple months ago who is a musician too.
Hmm.
And potentially, we okay, so we've been kind of getting together and we've been working on some
Like a project,
duos.
like a duo. You're gonna make like a band, like a duo, like Hall and Oates.
Something like that.
No, it's like, well, that's kind of like the big duo. Everybody knows like what's a duo is, like Hall and Oates or the Everly Brothers. Or it's like when you get two people together. But uh, yeah, uh, yeah, that'd be cool. So
Mhm,
I'm always into seeing how like because I'm a musician first. Like I was in bands before I ever like did my own thing, and I
mhm,
was always in like rock bands or punk bands or like synth bands, new wave bands, and there's something about working with other people. Like you can be like a singer songwriter, you have your own stuff. But anytime I ever worked with another artist or worked with like four guys in a band, it was really cool because like you never know how something's gonna come out. Like if somebody brings something to the practice and then suddenly you create something else, right? Somebody come, I might have a line, and then the guitar player came in and said, "Oh, I like that Moog line. Let me boom," and then start doing a chord arrangement. And it's just a really interesting process. So I think once you have two creative people together, or then where you're three or you're four, it becomes a whole thing. So I think so. You finding it very interesting, or like something you want to do?
Absolutely. Because yeah, so um kind of back to me transitioning more into R&B,
Hmm.
producing R&B tracks. So I've been writing some stuff, and usually when I write, I don't necessarily bounce my ideas off of other people. I used to, especially when I was first producing, just to get that feedback. But I guess I've kind of shied away from that because, people are busy and I don't want to
Hmm.
always be sending my mixes, especially because I'm writing songs a lot faster now. I'll
Hmm.
have like four things that I could potentially send to somebody. But my friend, he likes listening to my mixes, and he'll actually give me feedback, like
That's
really good
awesome.
feedback, because he has his own taste, his own ear,
Hmm.
and his feedback is actually like I take his feedback
Well, that's the
because
start of
I
that's the start of a duo. Because
yeah.
like that's the start. Like when you finally like when I kind of when I was growing up is like I had these guys they knew I could play, and then like, it was a guy who was a bass player, was a guy who was a drummer, another guy who was a guitar player. They said, well, we need a keyboardist, and the whole Keith's doing that all the time. So it's but it's the feedback because like I'm a songwriter, so because I'll kind of alpha, I'll go in and I'll try to write the whole thing, and then the
Mhm.
rest of the guys were like, no, 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 no. Like let's do this bass line, let's do this part. That maybe we don't like that arrangement. But it's kind of like when you find out like that you can feed off of other people and it generates other ideas, and that feedback is really important. I think when you're a musician, like you grow more, the more people you play with, the better you get. That's what I found over the years. Like the different types of people I ended up playing with actually taught me how to play better.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, for example, I had this arrangement that I was working on, and of course, I wrote the whole thing. That's typically what I do. I'll write the whole thing. I think this was the first or the second one that I showed him, and he was like, I really like this, but this section it feels really repetitive.
Mhm.
And then I kind of listened again. I was like, you know what, you're right. I'll take that out or I'll mix it up somehow. So it's really valuable
Yeah,
to
it's
have
just like
that
when you have
feedback.
a producer, because a lot of times, like if you're a single musician, you run into a producer, and the producer helps you like make the right choices. And when you have the right producer, they don't like make you sound like them, they enhance how you sound. Like when you run
Mhm.
into a really good producer, like you get to stay, Project P, but you get better. They listen to what you're doing and they embellish it, but it's still like Project P. It's like your demo, but then your demo sounds like wow, but it doesn't radically change to like what they sound like unless you choose to do that. There's some people
Right.
that go to producers and they have a certain style and that's what they go with and they're not them anymore. They went with that producer. I
Mhm.
kind of like the style when somebody just embellishes somebody's original song because like a lot of times like a singer songwriter has such a unique vision that if the vision gets stomped on by like a more alpha type of person, and they say, "Well, I like the voice, but I don't like anything else." Then they kind of just mold you, and it's like it depends like what you want as a musician. Do you want to get molded, or do you want to like have an evolution of your sound? And I think it's like the musicians who kind of stick to their guns and say, "Well, I really have a certain vision, right? And I want to just get better, but I don't want to like throw out 90% of my vision just to get that one big hit." And
Mhm.
it's kind of like you got to make a choice. Yeah, I guess it's degrees of how much you do that.
Right, true. And his feedback, it didn't change the song at
Mhm.
all. It still had the
It's still you.
initial yeah, it was still me. It was still the essence of the song, which was kind of like a slower BPM, really relaxed vibe.
Mhm.
He just really had that feedback on that one section. And that honestly, that that's an instrumental for something that I intend to put vocals on, and I think having it be more simple will be better because the vocals will really stand out more. So it
Yeah,
was really
yeah.
good feedback.
It is it's interesting, like, if I did nothing most of my career, was, like, instrumental, right? I didn't have vocals.
Mhm,
Most of my stuff was, like, soundscapes, like, progressive stuff, like, Yes, kinda Genesis, like, soundscapes without any lyrics.
mhm,
And then once I started having to put lyrics on things, I was like, well, I had to change the way I played, because then I had to, like, okay, I actually have to try to make this more digestible,
mhm,
to the audience. Because like, you could do this progressive stuff, you could end up doing these big, long jams like Funkadelic or like, like 70s stuff, but, like, it's not a song, it's like a jam, or it's a big, long piece, but you can't actually you get it's a different set of talent when you have to actually try to get something work with lyrics and a hook, and, it's a totally different thing. And it makes you work in a different way. Did you find that compared to like when you're doing like electronic music and then you want to put things that actually have vocals, that it starts, you start being paying more attention to like, okay, I don't have to go full bore on this instrumentation because there's a vocal coming in and I gotta leave room for it.
mhm. Well, I haven't actually added vocals to anything yet.
Hmm.
'Cause I don't think I or my friend are quite ready for that stage.
Hmm.
We're still really training and practicing, covers together before we write our own originals. But, I can see that now, and I understand it, so I try now a lot of my instrumentals are going
Hmm.
to be a lot more simple. They're gonna be
Yeah,
much more simple,
yeah, to
and
let the room.
I'm still gonna release my instrumentals just because, I wanna keep it going in terms of my creativity,
Well, you probably
but
have
yeah.
an audience that likes that type of work. Like when I was working, then like people just knew me for my instrumentals. And, like, I
Mhm.
lost some of the people that like my instrumentals when I introduced my other music, but then I gained more people by doing the vocals than I ever had with my instrumental. So
Yeah.
it's kinda like, "Okay, well, if you guys leave, I actually got more doing the other thing," so it's like, "Okay, fine." But, I kind of eventually had a balance where I was doing, like, 50-50, and then it went to, like, 80-20, and then it's like 95-5.
Yeah.
Because eventually, like, once you get, like, your voice and you get that, then you tend to kind of stay in that if it's working, you know. And so like that's what ends up happening. At least it happened to me. But I think a lot of times, like when you transition to like trying to get into a different genre or introducing your voice, it there's a lot of work in that. So you eventually, it becomes like one path. But yeah, you always like to keep the other things open. Like I think one of the things today is there's so many different ways to do music. So a kind of combination of like electro and R&B is or electronic and R&B. I mean, I think there's a lot of room for that in the same kind of like if you had an album, you still might want instrumentals to kind of in between like the vocals because it's something that
Right.
you're known for and maybe that would work is like an EP.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Because like one of the things I love about like EPs and albums is that you can do things that you can't do in a single. So then, like in your case, you could still have instrumentals in between vocal type of songs,
Mhm.
and then have like a theme that's kind of similar. Where it kind of puts them together. That's the whole idea of an EP or an album is this doesn't have to be a concept, but there's something about it that makes it a project.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, uh I guess song or track that I wrote that I think I'll put lyrics on. I actually took us 2 pretty huge sections of that track, and it's just instrumental. It just doesn't feel right to put vocals there. So it's kind of half vocals, half instrumentals. And I feel like I'm gonna let my friend listen to that one, but I feel like it still works. Like, it doesn't all have to contain lyrics.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's like a lot of music by like one of my favorite like progressive bands, like Yes. They have these big, long 8, 10 minute, 15-minute songs. and they'll have like a vocal section, and then it goes on to like a classical type of thing where it goes on for like 5 minutes with no vocals at all. A lot of progressive rock, Pink Floyd, Genesis, yes, they have songs like this where they'll have like a theme, and then they'll kind of go into other time signatures, and it changes like a suite of songs, and it's like they sometimes they don't have any vocals for a long period of time, and then it will come back or go into a different structure. It's like multiple songs kind of strung together.
Mhm.
And like the Beatles were known for that. Like if you listen to Abbey Road, they had stuff where it was like multiple short songs tied together, and then have instrumental sections with no vocals. It's kind of they were kind of that album was very progressive. When they went to do Abbey Road, they kind of went, and it's kind of like a preview of what the '70s ended up being. With like a lot of these albums that had like very interesting, kind of ideas of mixing genres and mixing time signatures, mixing all these things. It's kind of like an old school way of being progressive, but it seems to be coming back from some people who are doing it in hip hop, where they have like these like rock operas. I mean, Tyler the Creator is known for creating these kind
I
of
was just gonna say that.
yeah
Tyler, the Creator comes to mind.
he does a lot of the techniques. They're like 1970s progressive. It's like funkadelic and Pink Floyd, and Beatle-esque, and that's kind of cool. It's weird that rock has gone away from that, and then hip hop is actually taking on a lot of things that rock from the '70s. That's what they did. Now rock doesn't do it, but hip hop does it.
Mhm.
Which is cool. It's just cool for different people to kind of take something from a different time period and use it. Which is, I think it's part of the evolution of music is like people mixing genres, which
Yeah,
is
for sure. I think Tyler, the Creator, I forget what song it was, but he sampled something by, Tame Impala, I
yeah, yeah.
believe.
Yeah, yeah, he has some pretty cool. They're pretty much a proto like progressive band.
Mhm.
One guy, but but he sounds like a full band.
Yeah.
But he does this really interesting thing. That it's very modern progressive, like Radiohead. It kind of like reminds me of Wilco or Radiohead. It's very progressive, but it's got that kind of surrealistic soundscape, sound
Mhm.
painting kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you're a synth head, you're like, wow, that's really cool. It's like I'm a total synth fanatic. I go back and I look at all kinds of synthesizers to try to figure out like how did they get those kind of cinematic sound paintings is how I look at it. Because
Mhm.
like a lot of stuff you can do with synthesizers kind of makes you think of scenes. Like I think of music in scenes. I don't know if you. I think I've talked to musicians a lot, and they you tend to kind of think like a painter. Do you feel that when you write?
Yeah, for sure when I write, because usually I have a specific idea or vision in mind, and then it's kind of like, okay, how can I design my synths to really paint this picture?
Yeah, I think it's like sound painting is a big thing. I mean, for synthesis, because if you're doing a big lush pad, and it's got like all this stuff going on. If you're getting real technical, you're like, oh, I got like four LFOs doing all these things, and it's like undercurrents of like more undercurrents and overcurrents and all this weird stuff going on. And it's in your mind, you're kind of seeing a picture. You're seeing like I'm seeing like some kind of space picture or some kind of scene that is like very much like a movie. Well, a lot of times when I'm trying to write something, I'm thinking of like movies, and I'm thinking of like trying to convey a feeling that would come be in a scene. And music is like that. To a lot of people, when you write, I think it comes from that kind of emotion. I think anytime you write something, it's coming from some kind of feeling as a creative person.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
So, so do you have any target dates for your next material that people can look forward to? Is like a lot of stuff coming into like 2022, or you have some things coming out like before the end of this year?
Um, so the way I've been writing is I try to release every other month. So since I released Fantasy this November, you can expect my next single to come out in January.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good to have a path like that,
Mhm.
because then you have people that have an expectation, and then your fans will follow you. And I've been able to kind of be able to get like a certain core of fans because they know I'm going to put out something on a pretty regular basis. So I've been able to keep like a momentum. And I think that's
Yeah.
like your whole thing. Like even if you got a small base, it's like maybe I got like 4 or 5,000 people that will go and listen to one of my things. But that's like okay, if I can keep them, I try to keep them and get it to go bigger. And so I try to like target to like okay, these people like this. I'm going to keep on going that way, and it starts creeping up. Oh, it hit 10,000. Oh, they really like it. you
Mhm.
know, and it's like that's all you can do as an artist is like, and then if you radically go do something, it's like, oh, it dropped down from 10,000 down to two. It's like, well, I guess I didn't do. They don't like that one. You kind of can see an immediate reaction, at least on the way the net is now. As a musician, you don't have to wait for like you can go and see your own metrics. Which is kind of cool. I think it's whether or not you want to listen to it, because sometimes you make a decision like I made a decision. I was getting people like to listen like 10,000 people, and suddenly I went and just said, "Well, I'm going to do something else," and I dropped down to like two. So it's like, well, I wanted to do that, so I was like, okay, fine. I dealt with it.
Yeah, that's always tough because on one hand, you wanna obviously please your audience and give them what they want, and on the other hand, you wanna keep evolving and exploring different things as a musician. So, yeah, it's like you have to, like, find the balance between what you like to do and what your audience likes to listen to,
Yeah, like
and
it's suddenly like I wanted to go punk out and do like a Ramones type of thing, and everybody was like, "Why are you doing that?" And I'm like, well, I like CBGBs and I like the Talking Heads and I actually like the Sex Pistols. So it's like, okay, maybe you guys don't like that, but once in a while I gotta rock out.
Mhm, exactly.
But it's kind of like where you go. It's like it's suddenly, oh, I want to do free jazz. Well, there's a bunch of people love free jazz, but suddenly, like if your fans like, well, I don't, I like techno, and then I go do free jazz, and we're like, what's that? It's like they're not gonna get into it, but it's like you feel the need to do it, then you're gonna do it. And like you
Right.
said, like as a musician, it's like I want to do free jazz because I got a chance to play some free jazz guys. It's like I'm gonna do it, and whether the audience follows me or not, it's like it's an opportunity to do something cool. And I think every musician kind of makes that decision, like case by case, where they are. Like you suddenly felt like you want this R&B vibe, and that's where your head's at. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where you're gonna go, and like, you never know where your head's gonna be like next year, or the year after that. You might go into something else. You might say, "Oh, I'm into trap. I'm gonna do trap. I'm gonna do side trance or whatever. I'm gonna get into something." And you never know where your head's at. 'Cause you hear something, and then you can't get it out of your head, and you're like, "Whoa!" It's like the BJ's. The BGs were like like a Beatle like band, and then suddenly they became the defining like band of like disco. And like how like you guys were doing like Beatle like songs. Early Bee Gees is like Beatles.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with disco at all. It's like very much like Beatle, like it sounds like the Monkees, sounds like the Beatles, sounds like a little about this like the Stones, and then suddenly they went and became this disco phenomenon. And you're like, wow, that's very radical how they shifted. But you never know, like artists can do that. They have like a second success. They actually when they were very young, they were super big, almost like the new Australian Beatles. And then they kind of dropped off, and then they came back even bigger than they ever were. And you
Mhm.
can never predict that. Like it was like oh well, you guys shouldn't do that. And I think they had people tell them like you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do this like disco stuff. Well, that was the wrong thing to say.
Right. It ended up working out.
Yeah, it ended up being like they're like the defining band in disco. Next to
Mhm.
Donna Summer and the Bee Gees. Like who do you think about? That's what you think about. But
Right.
yeah, you never know where you're gonna go. I think it's like I think your heart as a musician, you kind of go with your heart. If you go with your heart, you never know. It's like it tends to be a good decision.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of felt that way when writing, my last release. 'cause I was like, "Well, this is a little bit different from what I did," and one of my most, my most streamed song is pretty much purely electronic. It's a very electronic heavy song.
Mhm.
So then to do something that's kind of going away from that was a little bit,
Yeah, so
um
it's hard.
yeah, it was a little bit hard, but people actually ended up liking it way more than I thought. Because I feel like because I write songs so fast and
Mhm.
I still have, like, that every other month release schedule, I released Fantasy, like, what, maybe 4 months after I wrote it, so I kind of felt different about it even after I released it. I was like, "Yeah, this was a good effort, but I'm better as a producer now." But people really liked it, like, way, way more than I thought.
It's weird because like, I think as a musician, you work on things and you got projects, I got tons of stuff in the can, right?
Mhm.
And then I have my thing that I think is great, right? So, like and sometimes it's like it's big like, there's a famous story about, like, Prince. Prince, like, had so much material, right? They had all these guys at Warner Brothers that would go through his stuff and say, "This is what's really gonna do it," right? And most of the time, they were right. Um, and Prince was actually wrong. Like he would pick the songs that didn't do well, and then if he let the Warner Brothers guys pick it, then they would do well. And he would always get kind of ticked off because it's like he had a song that he liked. One of his favorite songs was a song called "Crystal Ball," and it's like freaking like it's like 10, 15 minutes long.
Mhm.
It's 10 minutes sweet, goes through all these key changes, and it's I think it's fantastic, but like it's not digestible by the audience. And Prince
Mhm.
was like, "This is my thing," and then Warner Brothers was like, "Oh, no, it's not." And so instead of Crystal Ball coming out, Sign of the Times came out. Everybody knows Sign of the Times. Hardly anybody knows about Crystal Ball unless you're like a
Mhm.
fanatic, right? So it's the kind of like say you have your thing that you love, and then you have stuff like the audience. Like sometimes you put something out, and it's like you didn't think it was going to do good at all, and the thing you really like is like it doesn't do good at all, and then the thing that you thought you were kind of iffy about, and then you put it out, and it's like, whoa, they actually like that one, and like I didn't really like that one.
Mhm.
So it's kind of sometimes it's good to have somebody else help you.
Mhm.
Like have a friend that you like send things to, and then they tell you like, well, you might not like it, but that one is actually the one. Really? And it's like that I find that sometimes as you get older, if you can get people to kind of help you, because especially if you're an artist that creates a lot of material, it's sometimes hard for an artist themselves to actually pick the right song.
Right, which is why I'm so grateful to have, another musician friend to
Yeah,
bounce
it's
ideas
really
off
good
of.
to have that. You've had to hold on to that person as much as you can,
I
because
will.
it's very good to have that. The more people you can that you trust, that actually you feel like, okay, I really think this person's opinion. I think highly of it, and when you find the person that can actually take listening to all your music, it's hard when if you're a person that creates a lot of work. There's a lot of people around you, like your family members and your friends, like they're like, well, I don't really get into that. Right. So you have to find like a whole nother set of like musician friendly people to your work and build that like connection. And that helps you kind of grow because the more what I found is as an artist, the more people I can get to listen to me and give me good, not negative, but positive reinforcement and feedback, then you grow really well. You can do a lot of work. It's like getting producers for free.
Right,
If
exactly.
you can find the people who are willing to listen to your content, you know, without making you pay for them to listen, which is like
Yeah,
that's a whole nother thing. But
yeah, I definitely agree, and I'm really grateful, for my friend and for his
well, I'm looking
feedback.
forward to if you guys have this duo. I'm looking forward to see what that becomes.
Yeah, so my vocal coach, so we've been working on covers right now and kind of, I guess what I can imagine is we'll continue to practice a lot of duo covers. And
Yeah,
then
that helps.
once we get really strong at that, we can, take a chance at writing our own stuff. But what she said was, she will kind of give us feedback about, how we sound together.
Hmm.
And so uh, last week, when I had my class, she said, I think you guys are ready to film yourselves singing.
Well, that's cool.
So, yeah. And she asked me, she was like, "Do you have an Instagram page?" I'm like, "Yes." So I have a feeling that
She
she's
wants
gonna
to.
watch, yeah, she's gonna watch record and she's gonna be like, "All right, take another one and then post it."
Yeah. Well, that's
So,
cool because you guys get that way. 'Cause this bedroom festival thing, we're gonna do this like twice to three, four times a year. So at one
mhm,
point, like maybe even if it's not next year or the year after, we're gonna be doing this. So we would love once you feel like you've got a performance you want to feel comfortable with, we'd love to have you do that on our platform, which is these festivals where we do these like 3 day festivals where we have multiple bands come out and kind of do their thing the way they want to. And it's it's cool to do it online because we found a way to do it, and eventually we are planning on doing it physically, like in New York. Could we actually have some connections? But once the pandemic is over, we potentially could do a physical show in New York with like multiple bands that have been on the podcast. That's our end goal when
mm,
things are better. But before things are better, we can still do it online. And we got bands from like everywhere, from Australia, Italy, New York, Boston, like anywhere in the country and around the world. And that's kind of cool because the way the podcast has been is that we talk to anybody and talk to everybody that I think is cool, and I like all kinds of music. So it's pretty much we got bands from Nashville, punk bands, rock bands, DJs, heavy metal, psychedelic, whatever. If I think it's cool, then I put it on.
mhm.
And so like it would be cool to see what you actually develop, how you develop into this. It's very interesting to me. That's why I love to keep on connecting with the people who have been on the show before. We're glad that you were on the show again.
Yeah, it was really great. And actually, one thing I was talking about with my friend is performing. Because he's done concert, he plays the cello, so he's
Oh,
done,
cool.
like, yeah, he's done recitals and over the years, and so have I with piano, and we were talking about how we both get nervous to do them, but, like, when we're in it, it's not so bad,
Yeah, once
and
you're in it, it's weird. Like
Mhm,
musicians, you can be like really. Every musician I've ever known, getting to the stage is a lot of angst, right?
mhm,
All day, like in the bus or whatever, and they have all kinds of problems until you got on. Then they get on the stage, and it's like it's okay. Now it's okay, but it's
mhm.
like every moment up to the time they get on the stage is like a big hassle, and it's like once they're on the stage, then it's like you become this other, I call it like the other me or the other, you like your stage persona.
Alter ego.
Yeah, if you kind of like to think about like David Bowie. Yeah, I always bring up Bowie. Yeah, Bowie was this chameleon, right? And he could go on stage and be Ziggy, he could be Aladdin Sane, he could be, all these characters he would create, and they were kind of like this other version of himself. And you get people like Lady Gaga can do that. Even to a degree, like Prince did that because Prince in real life is nothing like the guy on stage.
Mhm.
He barely could communicate, but once he's on stage, he's like, wow, he looks so confident. But like once he was off stage, it was like all this other stuff going on. It's like, well, he doesn't seem as confident. um, but it's like it's something about like once you go on stage as a musician that you can kind of let these things go, and the more you do it, you find like yourself, this other self, this performing self that you don't have to worry about it. It becomes like this, like like muscle memory or just song memory. You don't you actually don't dread it. You like love it.
Yeah, for sure,
Once
so I'm definitely looking forward to performing, either just me or with my friend if we ever get to that.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I really would love to see that because I think I do like to see how artists evolve and how they're able to get their own voice and how their music changes over time. It's been like a whole process to me. It's like listening to music like reading a really good novel, and you kind of evolves and you get all kinds of interpretations, it's just something I really, am a fan probably before I'm a musician. I've been a fan of like tons of different things, but it's great to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to your releases going into 2021 and 2022, and what is out right now. So everybody, go and check the links I'm going to have on this podcast, so you can check out everything that's out there for you. I think I have a bunch of links, so people just click on them. And remember, when you're listening to an artist, please download, please, playlist, tell your friends, actually subscribe. Say you like it, hit the like button. It's very important to do that. Just don't listen. Do the extra step. If you really dig somebody, do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me again, and you definitely will be seeing more from me soon.
Oh, great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much. Have a good new year and happy holidays. If we don't see you until next year.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Bye
Bye.
bye.